The hardest part of going undercover wasn't the fake gray beard itching against my jaw, or the flannel shirt that smelled like motor oil and regret. It wasn't even the scuffed work boots 2 sizes too big, stuffed with newspaper to fit my feet. No, the hardest part was the thirst. I had been sitting at table 4 in my own flagship cafe for 23 minutes, watching staff glide past me like I was invisible. My throat was desert dry, and irony tasted bitter on my tongue. Around me, the Sterling Reserve hummed with life. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of porcelain cups on marble counters, the soft jazz floating from hidden speakers. The aroma of freshly roasted beans wrapped around everything like an expensive perfume. But none of it was for me. Not today. Not dressed like this. I finally caught the eye of the manager, a sharp-featured woman in her 30s whose name tag read Vanessa. I raised my calloused hand slightly, the same hand that had signed her employment contract 18 months ago from my corner office 40 floors above the city. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice rough and tired. "Could I get a glass of water?" "Just tap water is fine." Vanessa's gaze traveled from my face down to my mud-caked boots, then back up again. Her nose wrinkled almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression that speaks volumes. She didn't say a word. She simply turned on her designer heels and walked away, her ponytail swishing like a dismissive hand. I was about to stand up, about to drop this whole charade and fire her on the spot, when the brass bell above the entrance chimed. An old man shuffled through the door, bringing with him a gust of freezing December rain. He wore a threadbare military jacket, the kind with faded patches and memories stitched into every seam. His hands trembled as he clutched a small plastic bag, and I could hear the jingle of coins inside it. He carefully wiped his feet on the mat, once, twice, 3 times, before stepping onto the polished hardwood floor. He approached the counter with the kind of humble smile that breaks your heart, the smile of someone who knows they don't quite belong, but is hoping for kindness anyway. I watched, waiting for someone in my company, to show this man the basic human decency that I had built this empire upon. Instead, I heard a laugh that made my blood freeze. "Water? For you?" Vanessa's voice dripped with contempt. She grabbed a paper cup from the stack, filled it from the pitcher, then deliberately walked to the decorative plant by the window and poured the entire cup into the soil. She turned back to the old man with a smile that could cut glass. "Oops. All out." That's when I knew I wasn't here to investigate falling morale. I was here to save my company's soul. 3 days earlier, I had been Lucas Sterling, CEO and founder of Sterling Grind Coffee Company, a man whose face was on the wall of every business school in America, whose rags to riches story was the subject of 2 best-selling books and a documentary. I sat in my office on the 47th floor of the Sterling Tower, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city below look like a toy model. My assistant, Margaret, had placed the morning mail on my desk with her usual efficiency. Most of it was the standard fare, acquisition proposals, investor reports, invitations to galas I'd never attend. But one envelope caught my eye. It was handwritten, slightly coffee-stained, and addressed simply to the real Lucas Sterling, if he still exists. I opened it. "Dear Mr. Sterling, I don't expect you to read this. Men like you probably have people to screen out letters from nobodies like me. But I'm writing anyway, because I remember when Sterling Grind was different, when it was a place where everyone was welcome. I used to take my daughter to your first location on Morrison Street every Saturday morning. She'd get a hot chocolate, I'd get your house blend, and we'd sit by the window and watch the world wake up. Your staff knew our names. They knew my daughter was saving up for art school. When my wife died, your manager, Tom, I think his name was, gave us free pastries for a month and never made us feel like charity cases. You built something beautiful, Mr. Sterling. You built a home. Last week, I took my daughter to your new flagship store downtown for her birthday. We saved up for it, wanted to make it special. Your staff took one look at my jacket, it's old, but it's clean, and my daughter's shoes, she's grown out of them, but new ones aren't in the budget yet, and sat us at a table in the back corner, next to the bathroom. We waited 30 minutes for someone to take our order. When we finally got our drinks, the barista, a young woman with Becky on her name tag, made a comment about how some people need to remember this isn't a soup kitchen. My daughter cried. On her birthday. In a coffee shop built by a man who supposedly understood what it meant to struggle. I don't know if the real Lucas Sterling still exists, or if success has turned you into just another corporate face who's forgotten where he came from. But if there's any part of you that remembers what it was like to be on the outside looking in, maybe you should visit your own stores. Not as the CEO, as a regular person. You might not recognize what you've built. Thomas Wright. I read the letter 3 times. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the city where I'd once slept on benches and counted pennies for day-old bread. Margaret appeared at my door. Your 10 o'clock is here, Mr. Sterling. The board meeting about the Q4 expansion. Cancel it, I said quietly. Sir, cancel everything for the next week. I'm going dark. She blinked. In 15 years as my assistant, I had never canceled a board meeting. Is everything all right? I turned from the window and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd been with me since the beginning, who remembered when we operated out of a garage and considered 5 customers a good day. Margaret, do you remember why we started this company? She smiled softly. Because you wanted to create the place you needed when you had nothing. A warm spot where everyone belonged. Exactly. I held up Thomas Wright's letter. And somewhere along the way, we lost that. I lost that. What are you going to do? I thought about the flagship store on 5th Avenue, the Sterling Reserve. The crown jewel of our expansion, designed to attract the upscale market. All marble and velvet, jazz and attitude. I'd approved every detail of it from my office, trusting the consultants and designers who promised it would elevate the brand. I'd never actually visited it as a customer. I'm going to take Mr. Wright's advice, I said. I'm going to see what I've built. From the outside. The transformation took 2 days and the help of a theatrical makeup artist I'd hired for our company's Halloween party last year. Her name was Simone, and she listened to my plan with the kind of professional detachment that told me she'd heard stranger requests. You want to look like a day laborer, she confirmed, studying my face. Someone who works construction or loading docks. Weathered. Tired. Forgettable. Exactly. She went to work. First came the gray in my hair and beard, not the distinguished silver of a CEO, but the dull gray of a man too worn out to care about Grecian formula. She added lines around my eyes, deepened the creases in my forehead, roughened my hands with a special wax that looked like decades of calluses. What's the story? She asked as she worked. If you're going method, you need a backstory. I thought about it. Frank Morrison, retired construction worker. Wife died 5 years ago. Living on a small pension, picking up odd jobs when I can. I'm tired, I'm alone, but I still have my dignity. Simone paused, studying me. That's specific. And sad. It's the truth for thousands of people in this city, I said quietly. It was almost my truth, once. When she finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me was someone I'd passed on the street 1,000 times without seeing. Someone invisible. Perfect. I spent the evening before my undercover mission driving through my old neighborhood, the part of the city where I'd lived in my 20s, before Sterling grind, before success, when I was just Lucas, a kid with nothing but student debt and a coffee addiction he couldn't afford. Morrison Street had changed. The old laundromat where I used to wash my only pair of work pants was now a boutique selling $70 candles. The bodega that let me buy individual eggs and slices of bread was a yoga studio. And on the corner where I used to sit with my cardboard sign, trying to scrape together enough for a meal, there was now a Sterling Grind Cafe. Not the Sterling Reserve flagship, just a regular location. But even the regular locations had changed. Through the window, I could see the customers. Young professionals in expensive athleisure, typing on MacBooks. A couple laughing over matching oat milk lattes. Everything looked perfect, polished, expensive. I remembered my original vision. A place for everyone. The businesswoman grabbing coffee before a meeting and the homeless veteran warming his hands around a paper cup would be treated exactly the same. With dignity. With respect. The measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members, my mother used to say. She'd been quoting someone. I could never remember who, but the words had stuck with me. When I opened my first cafe, I put a version of that quote on the wall. Everyone deserves a warm welcome. I wondered if that sign was still there, or if it had been replaced by something more aesthetically pleasing during the redesign. I got out of my car and walked to a different part of the neighborhood, the part that gentrification hadn't quite reached yet. There was a soup kitchen I used to volunteer at, back when I was building the business. Before I got too important, too busy, the line stretched down the block. men and women in worn coats, huddled against the December wind. I joined the end of the line, dressed in the flannel shirt and work boots I'd wear tomorrow. Nobody looked at me twice. I was one of them now, or close enough. First time? The man in front of me asked. He was probably my age, but looked 20 years older, the kind of aging that comes from sleeping rough and skipping meals. Yeah, I lied. He nodded. They're good people here. Food's decent. They don't make you feel like garbage for needing it. That's important, I said. You'd be surprised how many places do. He shifted his weight, favoring his left leg. There's a fancy coffee shop that opened a few blocks over. Sterling something. My buddy went in there once, just to use the bathroom. Manager called the cops on him. Said he was loitering. My stomach dropped. Which location? Does it matter? They're all the same once you get successful enough. Forget where they came from. He looked at me with tired eyes. You seem like a good guy. Advice? Don't go to places like that. Stick with places that remember what it's like to be hungry. I wanted to defend my company. Wanted to tell him that wasn't what Sterling Grind stood for, that we were different. But was that true anymore? Or had I built something that I'd lost control of, a machine that ran on profit margins and market demographics instead of the values I'd started with? The soup kitchen door opened, releasing the smell of beef stew and fresh bread. The line moved forward. Thanks for the advice, I told the man. No problem, friend. We look out for each other down here. That's something your fancy coffee shops will never understand. I took my tray of food, stew, bread, an apple, and sat at a communal table. I ate slowly, listening to the conversations around me. People talked about job interviews and welfare offices, and where to find warm places to sleep when the shelters were full. They shared information like currency, helping each other survive. This was community, real community, and it shamed me to realize that I'd lost sight of it somewhere between my first location and my 50th. As I left the soup kitchen, I made myself a promise. Tomorrow, I'd see the truth. And whatever I found, I'd fix it, even if it meant tearing down everything I'd built. The Sterling Reserve stood on the corner of 5th and Madison like a temple to affluence. The exterior was all glass and brushed steel, with my company's logo etched in gold above the entrance. Through the windows, I could see the interior designer's vision realized perfectly. White marble counters, emerald velvet chairs, brass fixtures that gleamed under carefully positioned lighting. It looked nothing like my first cafe. That had been a small storefront with mismatched furniture I'd bought from thrift stores, walls painted yellow because the paint was on sale, and an espresso machine I'd saved 3 years to afford. But it had been warm, welcoming, real. This place looked like it should have a velvet rope and a bouncer. I took a breath and pushed through the door. A blast of warmth hit me immediately. The heating was set high, almost too high. The scent of coffee wrapped around me, rich and dark, mixing with something else. Vanilla? No, bergamot. Some expensive room fragrance. I stood in the entrance for a moment, waiting for someone to greet me. That was policy. I'd written it myself. Every customer receives a warm welcome within 5 seconds of entering. 10 seconds passed. 15. 20. The barista at the counter, a young woman with severe bangs and a name tag that read Becky, glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Her eyes flicked to my boots, still damp from the rain, then to my flannel shirt with its frayed collar. I watched her expression shift from indifference to something like distaste. She turned to her coworker and whispered something. They both glanced at me and smirked. A couple at a nearby table looked up from their phones. The woman's gaze traveled over my appearance, and she shifted her designer handbag to the other side of her chair, the side away from me, as if poverty were contagious. I walked to the counter, my boots squeaking slightly on the polished floor. In my old cafe, that floor had been scratched wood that I'd mopped myself every night. You could see the wear patterns from years of foot traffic, and I'd loved every scuff mark. This floor looked like it had never been walked on. Can I help you? Becky asked, her tone suggesting that helping me was the last thing she wanted to do. I glanced at the menu board. The prices made me wince internally. $12 for a latte? $15 for a specialty drink? I remembered when I'd struggled to charge $3, worried that it was too expensive for my neighborhood. I'll have a small black coffee, I said, keeping my voice rough. And a glass of water, please. Coffee's $6. I pulled out a handful of crumpled bills and coins from my pocket, counting them slowly. The act wasn't entirely performance. I deliberately brought exact change to stay in character. $6 in small bills and quarters. Becky's lip curled slightly as I counted out the money on the counter. She swept it into her hand without touching my fingers, then dropped it in the register like it was contaminated. The coffee will be ready at the end of the counter, she said, already turning away. Someone will bring you water. Thank you, I said. She didn't acknowledge it. I moved to the pickup area and waited. Behind me, I heard Becky talking to her coworker in a voice just loud enough to carry. I don't know why they don't have a minimum purchase requirement. This isn't a homeless shelter. Her coworker laughed. Seriously, the smell alone. I gritted my teeth and said nothing. This was what I'd come to see, after all. The truth. My coffee appeared. A small paper cup placed roughly on the counter without a sleeve. I picked it up, the heat immediate against my palm, and looked for a table. The cafe was moderately full, maybe 2/3 capacity. There were plenty of empty tables. But something about the arrangement of customers made me notice a pattern. All the occupied tables were in the front half of the cafe, near the windows, in the Instagram-worthy seating area with the good lighting and the decorative plants. The back half, near the bathroom and the service hallway, was completely empty. I started toward one of the window tables. Excuse me. Vanessa, the manager, materialized beside me. Her smile was professional, but didn't reach her eyes. Those tables are reserved. I looked at the empty chairs. I don't see any reservation signs. They're reserved for guests making larger purchases. For parties, you'll be more comfortable in the back. She gestured toward the empty section with a manicured hand. More comfortable. The polite fiction of segregation. I prefer to sit by the window, I said quietly. Her smile tightened. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to follow cafe policy. The back tables are perfectly adequate for your needs. We locked eyes for a moment. I was testing her, and we both knew it. She was testing me too, seeing if I'd push back, if I'd make a scene, if I'd give her an excuse to ask me to leave. I thought about revealing myself right then. Thought about the satisfaction of watching her face when she realized who I was. But something stopped me. This wasn't enough yet. I needed to see how deep this route went. Fine, I said and walked to the back. Table 4 was in the corner, partially hidden by a decorative screen. The lighting was dimmer here, the atmosphere less carefully curated. I could hear the staff break room door opening and closing, could smell the faint scent of cleaning chemicals. This was where they put the customers they didn't want to see. I sat down, placed my coffee on the table, and waited for my water. And waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I watched Becky deliver 3 elaborately decorated drinks to customers in the front section, each time stopping to chat, to smile, to create this sterling experience that our marketing department was always talking about. She walked past my table twice without looking at me. At the 15-minute mark, I stood up and approached the counter again. A different barista was there now, a young woman with kind eyes and a nervous energy. Her name tag read Mia. Excuse me, I said. I asked for a glass of water earlier. Oh, her eyes widened with concern. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me get that for you right away. She grabbed a glass, an actual glass, not a paper cup, and filled it with ice water from the filtered pitcher. As she handed it to me, our fingers touched briefly, and I noticed how cold her hands were despite the overheated cafe. Here you go, she said with a genuine smile. I apologize for the wait. Can I get you anything else? Before I could answer, Vanessa appeared behind her like a shark sensing blood. Mia. Her voice was sharp. Why are you using the glassware for complimentary water? Mia's smile faltered. It's just water. We use glass for all beverages. We use glass for paying customers making appropriate purchases. Paper cups for water. Vanessa plucked the glass from my hand before I could react and dumped the contents into the sink. Please be mindful of inventory costs. She thrust a paper cup at me. Empty. Of course, Mia whispered, her cheeks flushing red. I'm sorry. I took the paper cup and looked at Vanessa. Really looked at her. She was probably in her mid-30s, impeccably dressed in the company's management uniform, black slacks, white shirt, company vest. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was perfect. Everything about her was polished and professional, and absolutely devoid of warmth. Is there a problem? She asked me, one eyebrow raised. No, I said slowly. No problem. Thank you for the water. I filled the paper cup myself from the water dispenser next to the condiment station, the same dispenser where customers were supposed to get water for free. The water was lukewarm and tasted faintly of plastic. Back at table 4, I sipped my coffee and observed. The front section of the cafe had developed the buzz of an exclusive club. A woman with a laptop decorated with designer stickers held court at the best window table, her cold brew and avocado toast spread before her like offerings. Every few minutes, someone would stop by her table to chat, and she'd laugh. A practiced, performative laugh that carried across the room. 2 tables over, a man in expensive athleisure was on a video call, his voice loud enough to disrupt the jazz music floating from the speakers. Nobody asked him to lower his voice. But when an older gentleman in a worn suit jacket entered and tried to sit in the front section, Becky was there immediately, guiding him to the back with the same polite but firm technique Vanessa had used on me. I pulled out a small notebook, the kind that construction workers use to track hours, and started taking notes. Not about what I saw, but about what I felt. I wanted to remember this. The particular shade of humiliation that came with being judged unworthy. The way invisibility felt like a weight pressing down on your chest. My mother had taught me to write things down when I was young. Feelings fade, she'd said, but words last. Write down what matters, Lucas. Someday you might need to remember. I wrote. They've created a caste system in a coffee shop. The worthy and the unworthy. And I'm responsible. The brass bell above the door chimed. I looked up and felt my heart stop. An old man stood in the entrance, water dripping from his threadbare military jacket. His face was weathered, carved with lines that spoke of years lived hard. His hands trembled, whether from cold, age, or illness, I couldn't tell, as he carefully wiped his boots on the mat. Once, twice, 3 times, taking his time to make sure he didn't track in any dirt. He wore the jacket with dignity, its faded patches telling stories. 101st Airborne. Purple Heart. Sergeant First Class. I knew that jacket. Not that specific one, but I knew what it meant. My father had worn one like it. Different unit, different war, but the same pride. The same sacrifice. Dad had died when I was 12, but I still remembered how he'd polish his shoes every Sunday, how he'd stand straighter when he wore that jacket, how he'd taught me that dignity wasn't about what you had, but about how you treated others. This man had my father's bearing. The military posture never quite leaves, even when everything else does. He approached the counter, his worn sneakers squeaking slightly on the perfect floor. From his pocket, he pulled out a small plastic bag, the kind banks give you for rolled coins. I could hear the jingle of quarters and dimes. Becky looked up from her phone. Her expression flickered through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, annoyance, and finally, disgust. "Can I help you?" she asked, the way you might ask a stray dog to move along. The old man's smile was heartbreaking in its hopefulness. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like to buy a sandwich, please. And maybe a small coffee if I have enough." He set the plastic bag on the counter and started counting coins carefully, his trembling fingers making the process slow. I watched from my corner table, my coffee forgotten, every muscle in my body tense. Becky didn't even look at the money. She glanced over her shoulder at Vanessa, who was arranging pastries in the display case. "Vanessa?" Becky called out. "We have a situation." Vanessa looked up, saw the old man, and her expression hardened. She walked over with the measured steps of someone approaching something unpleasant. "Sir," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. "I'm afraid we can't serve you today." The old man's smile wavered. "I have money. I counted it this morning. $7.50. That's enough for—" "It's not about the money." Vanessa's voice was ice. "We have the right to refuse service, and I'm exercising that right." "But why?" His voice cracked. "I just want something warm. I've been walking in the rain all morning. Our customers have complained about disruptive individuals making them uncomfortable. We're a premium establishment. We have standards to maintain." My hands clenched around my notebook. I started to rise from my chair, ready to end this charade right now. Consequences be damned. But then the old man spoke again, and something in his voice stopped me. "I fought for this country," he said quietly. "I served 3 tours. I got wounded in Fallujah saving my squad. I've got the scars and the nightmares to prove it. And now I can't even buy a cup of coffee in the country I bled for." "That's very unfortunate," Vanessa said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "But your service doesn't entitle you to harass our paying customers." "I'm not harassing anyone. I just want— If you don't leave immediately, I'll call the police." The cafe had gone silent. The woman with the laptop was watching, her fingers frozen over her keyboard. The man on the video call had muted himself. Everyone was looking at the drama unfolding at the counter, and nobody was doing anything. The old man stood there for a long moment, his coins still scattered on the counter. Then, slowly, with shaking hands, he began gathering them back into the bag. "Wait," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Could I just have a cup of water then? Please? Just water." And that's when Vanessa smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd won, who had power and knew it, who was about to twist the knife just because she could. She grabbed a paper cup, filled it with water from the pitcher, and then, maintaining eye contact with the old man, she walked to the decorative plant by the window, a monstera in an expensive ceramic pot, and poured the entire cup of water into the soil. She turned back to him, still smiling. "Oops," she said sweetly. "All out." The old man's face crumbled. It was the kind of expression that I knew I'd see in my nightmares. A man's dignity being stripped away in public, his last shred of hope torn from his hands. Becky laughed. Actually laughed. And that's when I heard another sound. A chair scraping against the floor. Someone else was standing up. Mia. Mia Torres had been working at the Sterling Reserve for 8 months, and in that time, she'd learned to keep her head down, smile at the right moments, and never, ever contradict Vanessa. The manager had made it clear during Mia's first week. This wasn't just a job, it was a privilege. Hundreds of people applied for every opening at the flagship location. Mia was lucky to be here. She should act like it. And Mia needed this job desperately. Her mother's medical bills didn't pay themselves. The night classes for her business degree weren't free. Her little apartment in Queens, the one she shared with 2 roommates, required rent every month whether she liked it or not. So she'd learned to swallow her objections, to look away when Vanessa steered certain customers to the back tables, to laugh at Becky's cruel jokes, to be complicit in the slow erosion of everything the Sterling Grind name was supposed to stand for. But watching that old veteran, Sarge, the neighborhood called him, watching him beg for water and be humiliated instead, something inside Mia snapped. Her hands were shaking as she stood up from the espresso machine where she'd been pretending to clean the steam wand. Her mind was screaming at her to sit back down, to stay invisible, to keep her job. Her heart was screaming louder. From my corner table, I watched her walk to the pastry display case with deliberate steps. She opened it and pulled out one of the premium sandwiches, roasted turkey on focaccia with sun-dried tomatoes and fresh mozzarella. $12. Then she grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerated case. The expensive kind, glass bottle, mineral water imported from Iceland. $5. She didn't ring it up. She didn't look at Vanessa. She walked straight to the old veteran, who was still standing at the counter, clutching his bag of coins. "Sir," Mia said gently, "I'm so sorry for the confusion. This is for you." She held out the sandwich and water. Sarge stared at them like they might disappear if he blinked. I can't pay for all that. I only have. It's on the house," Mia said firmly. "Please, take it." On the house. Vanessa's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Mia, what do you think you're doing?" Mia turned to face her manager, still holding the food out to Sarge. "I'm serving a customer. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? That's inventory. Company property. You don't have authorization to give away product. The company policy manual says staff can comp items up to $20 for customer service recovery." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "There's been no service failure requiring recovery." "Really?" Mia's voice was shaking but steady. "Because it looks to me like we just told a veteran he's not good enough to drink our water. That seems like a pretty significant service failure." The cafe was dead silent now. Every customer was watching. I saw several people pull out their phones, though whether to record or just to look busy, I wasn't sure. "Mia." Vanessa walked closer, lowering her voice to a dangerous whisper. "You're new here. You clearly don't understand how things work. This is a premium location. We cater to a specific clientele. We have an image to maintain." "An image?" Mia's laugh was borderline hysterical. "We're a coffee shop. We sell coffee. Our literal job is to serve people coffee. Our job is to maximize profit per square foot by attracting high-value customers and creating an exclusive atmosphere that excludes people who fought for our country, that treats human beings like they're garbage. That's the atmosphere we're creating." Vanessa's face flushed red. "You're out of line." "Maybe I am. Mia thrust the sandwich and water into Sarge's hands. The old man took them automatically, his eyes wide with shock. But at least I can sleep at night. You're fired. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Mia's face went pale. I watched her mouth open, close, open again. She'd known this was coming. She had to have known. But hearing it still hit like a physical blow. What? She whispered. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Theft of company property and insubordination. Security will escort you out. I didn't steal anything. I comped a meal for a customer. That's within policy. I determine what's within policy. Vanessa pulled out her phone. I'm calling security now. You have 2 minutes to collect your personal belongings from your locker. Mia stood frozen. I could see her calculating. The bills due next week, her mother's medication, the rent that would come regardless. Every practical reason to beg, to apologize, to grovel for her job back. Instead, she straightened her spine and looked Vanessa in the eye. You know what? Fine. Fire me. But I'm not leaving until this man has a place to sit down and eat his meal in peace. She turned to Sarge, who looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Please, miss, he said quietly. I don't want you to lose your job for me. I'll just go. No. Mia's voice was firm. No, you're going to sit down and eat your sandwich. You paid for it with your service to this country. That's worth more than money. She guided him to one of the forbidden window tables, the best seat in the house, with a view of Fifth Avenue and the perfect afternoon light streaming through the glass. She pulled out the velvet chair for him like he was royalty. Mia, Vanessa's voice was shrill now. Get away from that table. That's reserved. Reserved for who? Mia shouted back, all pretense of professionalism gone. Show me the reservation. Show me the name. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's what I thought. Mia turned back to Sarge. Please, sir. Eat. Take your time. You're not going anywhere. Becky had joined Vanessa now, both of them staring at Mia like she'd grown a second head. A few customers looked uncomfortable, gathering their things, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever was happening. But others stayed. Some were even smiling. This is insane, Becky said. Vanessa, call the cops. Get them both out of here. Both. Sarge's voice was small. I don't want any trouble. I'll leave. You're not leaving. I stood up from table 4, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every head in the cafe turned toward me. I walked toward the front counter with slow, deliberate steps. My boots squeaked on the perfect marble. My flannel shirt looked painfully out of place among the brass and velvet. Vanessa barely glanced at me. Sir, if you're going to cause a disturbance, I'll have to ask you to. To what? I said quietly. To leave? Without my water. What? I ordered a glass of water 25 minutes ago. I'm still waiting. Vanessa's nostrils flared. You got water. In a paper cup. That's policy for people like me? I finished. People who don't look like they belong in your premium establishment. I don't have time for this. She turned away dismissively. If you have a complaint, you can submit it through the corporate website. I think I'll handle it in person. Something in my tone made her pause. She turned back slowly, really looking at me for the first time. I reached up and pulled off my beanie. My gray hair, the theatrical makeup that had looked so convincing in the mirror, stood at odd angles. I wiped my hand across my cheek, smearing away some of the artificial dirt. What are you doing? Vanessa asked, confusion creeping into her voice. I reached into the inside pocket of my flannel shirt and pulled out my wallet. From it, I extracted a black metal card. Heavy, substantial, with gold lettering embossed across its surface. I placed it on the marble counter between us. The card spun slightly before settling flat, the overhead lights catching the gold text. Lucas Sterling, founder CEO, Sterling Grind Coffee Company. The color drained from Vanessa's face so fast I thought she might faint. Mr. Sterling, she breathed. I looked past her to the wall behind the counter, where my corporate mission statement was printed in elegant script on a brushed steel plaque. At Sterling Grind, every person who walks through our door is valued, respected, and welcomed. We don't just serve coffee, we serve community. I'd written those words 15 years ago in a notebook not unlike the one in my pocket now. I'd meant every word. Tell me, Vanessa, I said softly, how exactly does refusing a veteran a cup of water serve community? The silence in the Sterling Reserve was absolute. Even the espresso machine had stopped hissing, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Vanessa stared at the corporate ID card on the counter, then at my face, then back at the card. I watched her mind racing, trying to calculate a way out of this, trying to find the words that would save her. Sir, I can explain, she started. Can you? I picked up the card and returned it to my wallet, then pulled off the flannel shirt. Underneath, I wore a plain white t-shirt, but the gesture was symbolic, shedding the disguise. I'd very much like to hear the explanation for telling a homeless veteran that the toilet is a more appropriate water source than a customer cup. I never said that. Vanessa protested, but her voice wavered. Really? Because I was sitting right there. I pointed to table 4. I saw you pour water into the plant. I heard you say oops, all out. Was I hallucinating? Becky had backed up against the espresso machine, her face ashen. The other customers were frozen in their seats, some filming now, openly pointing their phones at the scene. You don't understand, Vanessa said, trying to regain her composure. This location has very specific demographics. We cater to an upscale clientele who expect a certain atmosphere. If we let just anyone, my voice rose despite my attempt to control it. He's not just anyone. He's a decorated veteran. He served our country. He has $7.50 in his pocket and wanted to buy a sandwich. The money isn't the issue. No, the issue is that he doesn't look rich enough for you. He doesn't fit your aesthetic. He might make your Instagram influencer customers uncomfortable with his reminder that poverty and sacrifice exist in the real world. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? I was fully angry now, all pretense of calm professionalism gone. What's not fair is that I built this company from nothing. From literally nothing. I was him. I pointed at Sarge, who was still sitting at the window table, his sandwich untouched, looking like he wished he could disappear. I slept in shelters. I dug through dumpsters behind restaurants. I knew what it felt like to be looked at the way you just looked at him. I walked closer to Vanessa, and she instinctively stepped back. I started Sterling Grind because I wanted to create the place I needed when I had nothing. A warm room. A kind word. A cup of coffee that made you feel human again. That was the whole point. Times change, Vanessa said weakly. The market evolves. We have to compete. Compete with who? Ourselves? What are we competing for? The title of most soulless corporation in America. I grabbed a menu from the counter. $12 for a latte. $15 for a specialty drink. Do you know what my first lattes cost? $3. And I agonized over whether that was too expensive. You can't run a business on sentiment, Vanessa argued. The numbers. The numbers. I laughed, a harsh sound. You want to talk about numbers? Let me show you some numbers. I pulled out my phone and opened the corporate dashboard, the one that showed real-time statistics for all our locations. I turned the screen toward Vanessa. This is our flagship location. Your location. You know what your customer satisfaction score is. 3.2 out of 5. Do you know what the score was at our first location? The little shop on Morrison Street that you probably think is beneath you? 4.8. I swiped to another screen. Staff turnover rate, 78% annually. Do you know why? Because working here is miserable. You've created a culture of cruelty and elitism that makes good people like Mia quit or get fired for showing basic human decency. I was maintaining standards. What standards? I demanded. Expensive furniture? Designer lighting? Those aren't standards. Those are props. Standards are how you treat people. And by that measure, you've failed catastrophically. I turned to address the room. Several customers were still filming. Good. Let them film. Let the world see this. I need everyone to understand something, I said. What you witnessed here today, this is not what Sterling Grind stands for. This is not what I built. This is what happens when people forget that businesses are made of human beings, not profit margins. I looked back at Vanessa. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Her eyes widened in shock. You can't. I absolutely can. I'm the founder and CEO. I own 51% of this company. I can fire whoever I want, and I'm firing you. This is wrongful termination. I'll sue. Please do. I was calm now, ice cold. I have about 40 witnesses here, plus security footage that I'm sure will show your treatment of customers over the past weeks. I'm also certain that when HR reviews your personnel file, they'll find a pattern of complaints that were ignored. Sue me. I welcome it. Becky, who had been trying to slowly edge toward the back room, froze when I turned my attention to her. And you? I said. Becky, right? She nodded mutely. You laughed. When your manager humiliated a veteran, you laughed. I, I didn't mean. Tears were streaming down her face now. I was just going along with cruelty. You were going along with cruelty because it was easier than standing up for what's right. Do you know what that makes you? She shook her head. Complicit. I let the word hang in the air. You're young. You're what, 21? 22? You have time to become a better person. But not here. You're fired too. Please, she sobbed. I need this job. I have student loans. And I had student loans when I was living in my car, I said, not unkindly. We all have bills to pay. But that doesn't give you the right to treat other human beings like they're worthless. You'll find another job. And maybe at that job, you'll remember this moment and choose kindness instead. I turned to the customers who were watching. I apologize to all of you for what you witnessed here today. This is unacceptable, and it will be addressed. Anyone who would like a full refund for their purchases today, please see Mia. She'll be handling all customer service for the rest of the afternoon. I walked over to where Mia was standing, still frozen in shock by Sarge's table. Mia, I said gently, you're not fired. You're promoted. As of right now, you're the interim manager of this location. We'll discuss permanent placement and a significant raise later, but for now, I need someone with actual human decency running this store. What? Mia looked like she might cry, but I don't have any management experience. You just demonstrated more leadership in 5 minutes than most managers show in their entire careers. You stood up for what was right when it cost you everything. That's the only qualification I care about. I turned to Sarge, who had been sitting silently through all of this, his sandwich still wrapped on the table in front of him. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. Sir, I said quietly, I owe you an apology. On behalf of my company, on behalf of every employee who has forgotten what we stand for, I am deeply sorry. Sarge shook his head, his eyes glistening. You don't need to apologize to me. You didn't do anything wrong. I did, though. I built a company and then got so caught up in expansion and profits that I stopped paying attention to the culture. I let people like Vanessa turn my dream into a nightmare. That's on me. You came here to fix it, Sarge said. That's more than most people would do. It's less than I should have done. I gestured to his sandwich. Please, eat. On the house. In fact, I turned to Mia. Mia, what's our policy going to be on veterans? She understood immediately. Free coffee and a meal for any veteran who walks through our door. Always. Not just at this location, I said. Corporate policy. Every sterling grind in the country. Put it in writing and send it to all managers by end of business today. Mia nodded, pulling out her phone to make notes. I looked back at Sarge. What's your name, sir? Your real name. Joseph Brennan. But everyone calls me Sarge. I was a sergeant in the Army. 3 tours in Iraq. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Brennan. I held out my hand. He shook it, his grip still firm despite the tremor. Thank you for remembering us. I never should have forgotten. I pulled something from my wallet, a black card, different from the corporate ID. This one had a magnetic strip and my personal signature. This is a Sterling Black Card. It gives you unlimited access to any product at any Sterling Grind location, anywhere in the world, for life. No questions asked. It's yours. Sarge stared at the card like it was made of solid gold. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. But it's what I can offer right now. I pressed the card into his hand. Please, take it. Use it. And if anyone ever gives you trouble because of it, you call the number on the back. That's my personal cell phone. I'll handle it personally. I stood up and addressed the cafe again. I'm going to be here for the rest of the week, working behind the counter, serving customers, learning what's really happening in my company. Anyone who has a complaint or suggestion, I want to hear it. No appointment necessary. Just come talk to me. Then I walked behind the counter, washed my hands, and tied on an apron. All right, I said to Mia. Show me how to use the new espresso machine. Apparently, I'm out of practice. The video went viral within 3 hours. A customer had filmed the entire confrontation, from Vanessa's cruelty to Sarge, to Mia's rebellion, to my revelation and the subsequent firing. By evening, it had been viewed over 2 million times. By the next morning, it was international news. The media loved the story. Undercover CEO fires manager for mistreating homeless veteran. It had everything: drama, justice, a satisfying reversal of power. My phone was exploding with interview requests from every major network. But I wasn't thinking about the media attention as I sat in the Sterling Reserve at 6 a.m. the next morning, before opening, reviewing the security footage from the past month with my head of HR. What I saw broke my heart. This wasn't an isolated incident. The pattern was clear and systemic. Vanessa had been steering certain customers to the back tables for weeks. She told a young mother with a crying baby to leave because it was disrupting the atmosphere. She'd called the police on a teenager who was studying for hours on one small coffee. A teenager who reminded me painfully of myself at that age, trying to find a quiet place to do homework. How did we not know about this? I asked Maria Chun, my HR director. Maria was a woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for a decade. She looked devastated. We had complaints. They went through the proper channels, customer service tickets, online reviews. But they were flagged as isolated incidents and filed away. Nobody escalated them. Why not? Because the numbers looked good. She pulled up a report on her laptop. This location had the highest revenue per square foot of any store in the company. Customer spend was up 35% year over year. From a pure business metric standpoint, Vanessa was a star performer. But the customer satisfaction scores were low, yes. But management interpreted that as selective clientele. The assumption was that upscale customers had higher standards, harder to please. Nobody realized, or wanted to realize, that we were literally excluding people. I dropped my head into my hands. I did this. I created a culture where revenue mattered more than values. Lucas, Maria's voice was firm. You created a company with good values. Other people corrupted them. That's not the same thing as you doing it. But I wasn't paying attention. I was so focused on expansion, opening new locations, entering new markets, pleasing investors, that I lost sight of why we existed in the first place. So what are you going to do about it? That was the question, wasn't it? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Fifth Avenue as the city woke up. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the buildings in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere out there, people were waking up in shelters or on park benches. People were counting change to see if they could afford breakfast. People were invisible. We're going to do an audit, I said. Every store, every manager, every policy. If this was happening here, it's happening elsewhere. That's a massive undertaking. We have over 500 locations. Then we better get started. I turned back to her. I want you to hire mystery shoppers. People who look homeless, working class, like they don't have money. Send them to every store and document how they're treated. I want video evidence. Maria was making notes. And if we find more managers like Vanessa, fire them. All of them. I don't care if it causes operational chaos. I'd rather close stores than run them like this. The board is going to push back. The investors can deal with it or sell their shares. I sat back down. I own controlling interest. I should have been using that power all along instead of trying to please everyone. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it and saw a text from my assistant Margaret. You need to see the morning news. All channels. I turned on the TV mounted on the wall. A morning show was playing, and my face was on the screen, a screenshot from the viral video, the moment I revealed my identity to Vanessa. The anchor was speaking. In what's being called the feel-good business story of the year, Sterling Grind CEO Lucas Sterling went undercover in his own flagship cafe and exposed a culture of discrimination against homeless and working-class customers. The video has sparked a national conversation about how businesses treat their most vulnerable customers. They cut to an interview with a homeless advocacy group. The director was saying, what Mr. Sterling did, holding his own company accountable, that's rare. Most CEOs would have handled this quietly, behind closed doors. Instead, he made it public. He showed that this behavior is unacceptable. That sends a powerful message. The show cut to a different clip. Someone had found an interview I'd done years ago, right after we went public. Younger me, full of idealism, saying, I'll never forget what it was like to be hungry, to be cold, to be treated like I didn't matter. Sterling Grind exists to make sure nobody feels that way when they walk through our doors. The anchor came back on screen. Sterling stock initially dropped 8% yesterday when the video went viral, as investors worried about the fallout. But in a surprising turn, it's rebounded and is now up 12%, as consumers are praising the company's response. Many are calling for a boycott of coffee chains that don't follow Sterling's example. I muted the TV. The market likes it when you have a conscience, Maria observed dryly. Who knew? The market is fickle. They like a good story. What I care about is whether we can actually change. There was a knock on the door. Mia stuck her head in. Sorry to interrupt. Sergeant Brennan is here. He says he wants to talk to you. Sarge entered, looking cleaner than yesterday. Someone at the shelter must have helped him shower and find fresh clothes. He was wearing the same military jacket, but it looked dignified now instead of desperate. Mr. Sterling, he said, I don't want to take up your time, but I needed to thank you. Properly. You don't need to thank me. I should be thanking you for your service. Not for that. He held up the black card I'd given him. I went to 3 different Sterling locations this morning. Use this card. You know what happened? I braced myself. Tell me. At the first one, the barista saw the card, and their eyes lit up. They said, oh, you're one of Mr. Sterling's special guests, and treated me like royalty. At the second one, the manager came out personally to shake my hand. Said they'd heard what happened, that they were ashamed of how our industry treats people, that I was welcome anytime. And the third one, Sarge smiled. The third one, I walked in looking like I always do, before I showed the card. And you know what? The girl at the counter smiled at me. Really smiled. Like I was a person. She said, good morning. How can I help you? And she meant it. He paused. That's the one that mattered. Not the special treatment because of a magic card. The basic human kindness. That's what you built, Mr. Sterling. That's what's worth saving. I felt my throat tighten. We're going to save it. I promise you that. After Sarge left, I spent the next hour calling an emergency meeting of all regional managers. By noon, they were dialing in from across the country. Over 50 faces on the video conference screen. All of them nervous about why the CEO had suddenly demanded their presence. I'm going to make this simple, I said, looking at each face on the screen. Every one of you is going to watch a video. Then we're going to talk about whether you still have a job. I played the footage from the Sterling Reserve. I watched their faces as they saw what had happened. Some looked horrified. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked defensive. When it ended, I said, show of hands. Who has seen behavior like this in their region? Silence. Nobody raised their hand. Really? In 50-plus regions, covering over 500 stores, not one of you has witnessed or heard about customers being mistreated based on their appearance or economic status? More silence. Let me rephrase. Who has seen this and ignored it because the store was profitable? Slowly, hands started to go up. 1, 3, 7. By the end, over half the regional managers had their hands raised. Thank you for your honesty, I said. Now here's what's going to happen. Every store in this company is going to be audited. Any manager found to be discriminating against customers, for any reason, will be terminated immediately. Any regional manager who enabled or ignored this behavior will be terminated. Any executive who prioritized profits over our core values will be asked to resign. But Mr. Sterling, one of the regional managers protested, if we fire that many people, we won't have enough staff to. Then we close stores, I said flatly. I will shut down every location in this company before I let us continue to operate like this. Am I clear? Stun nods. Good. You have 1 week to identify problems in your regions and report them. Anyone who tries to cover up or minimize issues will be immediately terminated when we find out. And we will find out. We're hiring independent auditors. We're sending in mystery shoppers. We're reviewing surveillance footage. The truth is coming out whether you cooperate or not. Your choice is whether you're part of the solution or part of the problem. I ended the call and turned to Maria. Start drafting severance packages. We're going to need a lot of them. The next 3 weeks were brutal. The audits revealed that the Sterling Reserve wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom. Out of 523 locations, we found serious issues at 147 of them. Different forms of discrimination, different excuses, but the same core problem. We had hired managers who valued profit over people, and we had rewarded them for it. I fired 89 store managers. I accepted the resignation of 12 regional managers and 3 corporate executives. I personally called each one and explained exactly why they were being let go. Some of them argued. Some threatened lawsuits. Some broke down crying, begging for second chances. The hardest call was to a woman named Jennifer who'd been with the company for 8 years. She'd been managing our Seattle flagship, and the mystery shopper footage showed her telling a homeless woman that she couldn't use the bathroom without making a purchase, despite company policy saying otherwise. Jennifer, I said on the call, I'm looking at your file. You were Employee of the Year in 2019. Your stores consistently have high revenue. Your staff turnover is low. On paper, you're an ideal manager. Then why are you firing me? She asked, her voice tight. Because I watched you tell a woman who clearly had nowhere else to go that she couldn't use the bathroom. A bathroom. The most basic human necessity. There's a public bathroom 2 blocks away. Have you ever been homeless, Jennifer? Silence. I have. I've walked those 2 blocks when you're exhausted, hungry, possibly sick. I've walked them when you have all your possessions in a garbage bag and you're terrified someone will steal them while you're in a public bathroom that probably doesn't have working locks. I've walked them while people look at you like you're subhuman. I didn't mean to be cruel, she said quietly. Our bathroom was getting trashed. People were doing drugs in there. I had to think about the other customers. Then you install better locks. You check more frequently. You hire security if needed. What you don't do is turn away a human being who needs help. I paused. Jennifer, I'm sure you're not a bad person, but you made choices that go against everything this company stands for. I can't overlook that, no matter how good your numbers are. After I hung up, I sat in my office and put my head in my hands. This was necessary, but it hurt. These were people's livelihoods I was destroying, families who depended on these incomes. But then I thought about all the people who'd been turned away, humiliated, dehumanized. They had families too. They mattered too. There was a knock on my door. Mia entered, carrying a tablet. She'd been commuting from Queens to Manhattan every day for the past 3 weeks, working 12-hour shifts as interim manager while studying for her finals. She looked exhausted but energized, like someone who'd found their purpose. You wanted the customer satisfaction update, she said, setting the tablet on my desk. I looked at the numbers. In 3 weeks, the Sterling Reserve's customer satisfaction score had jumped from 3.2 to 4.6. Revenue was actually up slightly, despite, or maybe because of, the changes. How did you do it? I asked. Mia shrugged. I just treated people like people. I trained the staff to smile at everyone, not just the ones who look profitable. We started a program where unsold pastries at the end of the day go to the shelter instead of the trash. We put up a new sign by the door. What sign? She pulled up a photo on her tablet. It was a simple wooden sign, hand-painted, hanging by the entrance. Everyone welcome. No minimum purchase. No judgment. Just coffee and kindness. Below it, in smaller letters. If you're struggling, please come in. If you need a warm drink, a bathroom, a safe place to sit, this is yours. If you can pay, wonderful. If you can't, that's okay too. We've all been there. I felt my eyes sting. Who wrote that? I did. Based on something Sarge said. Is it okay? I probably should have asked permission. It's perfect. I want one in every store. Over the next month, I visited 50 different Sterling Grind locations across the country, always arriving unannounced, sometimes in disguise, sometimes as myself. I worked shifts behind the counter. I cleaned bathrooms. I took out trash. I listened. In Portland, I met a barista named Kevin who kept a box of granola bars behind the counter and quietly slipped them to customers who looked hungry. Company policy says we can't give away food, he told me. But I buy them with my own money. Management doesn't know. I promoted him to shift supervisor on the spot and changed the policy. In Atlanta, I saw a manager named Patricia training her staff on what she called dignity service, treating every customer, regardless of appearance or purchase amount, with the same respect you'd give anyone. I promoted her to regional manager. In Chicago, I watched a young employee named David get berated by a wealthy customer for taking too long with her order. The customer called him incompetent, stupid, said he'd never amount to anything. David kept his composure, apologized, and still delivered her drink with a smile. After she left, I found him in the back room, trying not to cry. You handled that well, I said. He jumped, realizing the CEO was standing there. Sorry, Mr. Sterling. I should get back to. You should take a break. And you should know that customer was wrong. You were professional and kind in the face of cruelty. That's harder than making a perfect latte. It's just part of the job, he said quietly. It shouldn't be. We're going to start a new policy. Staff have permission to refuse service to customers who are verbally abusive. No customer has the right to dehumanize our employees. Really, you matter, David. You're not just a coffee-making robot. You're a person, and you deserve to be treated like one. That conversation led to another company-wide policy change. the respect goes both ways initiative. We put up signs in every store making it clear that abusive staff would not be tolerated. Some customers complained, said we were too sensitive, too politically correct, that the customer is always right. I responded publicly in an interview with NPR. The customer is not always right. Sometimes the customer is wrong. Sometimes the customer is cruel. And when a customer treats my staff like they're worthless, I side with my staff every time. We're in the business of serving coffee, not absorbing abuse. More locations announced they'd adopt similar policies. The union representing food service workers publicly thanked us. Applications to work at Sterling Grind tripled. 6 months later, I stood in the original Sterling Grind location on Morrison Street, the tiny storefront that had started everything. We'd kept it open all these years, though it had been largely forgotten in favor of the newer, shinier locations. Not anymore. I decided to make it the model for what every Sterling location should be. We stripped out the sleek modern renovations someone had installed and brought back the mismatched furniture, the yellow walls, the community bulletin board. We added something new, a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy a coffee for someone in need. The board was always full. Today was the grand reopening, and I'd invited some special guests. Thomas Wright walked in with his daughter, the same daughter who'd cried on her birthday at the flagship store. She was smiling now, looking around with wonder. "Mr. Sterling," Thomas said, shaking my hand. "I never thought. I wrote that letter hoping maybe you'd read it, but I never expected. You gave me a wake-up call I desperately needed. Thank you." His daughter was looking at a wall where we'd hung photographs, images of the community throughout Sterling Grind's history. There was a new section titled Everyone Belongs, with photos of diverse customers, families, students, elderly folks, veterans, homeless individuals, all sharing the space. "I took a photo here once," she said quietly. "When I was little, Mom was still alive. We're on this wall." She pointed to a picture I'd never noticed before, a younger Thomas with a woman and a little girl, all holding paper cups and laughing. "We were celebrating my acceptance to art school," Thomas's daughter said. "I got a full scholarship. I'm graduating next month." "Congratulations," I said. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Well, Sarah, how would you like a job? We need someone to manage our social media and community outreach. Someone who understands what this company is supposed to mean." She stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Completely. If you're interested." "Ah, yes. Yes, absolutely." Across the room, I saw Mia talking with Sarge. He'd gotten housing through a veterans program I'd connected him with, and he'd been coming to the Sterling Reserve every day, sometimes to get coffee, sometimes just to sit and read the newspaper, sometimes to chat with Mia. Today, he was wearing a Sterling Grind polo shirt. "Mr. Sterling," Mia called out. "Come meet our newest employee." I walked over, confused. "Newest employee?" Sarge looked embarrassed. "It's just part-time. A few hours a week." Mia thought. She thought maybe I could talk to customers. Share my story. Help people understand. Understand what? That anyone can end up where I was. And that places like this, places that treat you like a human being, they can save your life. He paused. "This job, it's the first time in 5 years someone's called me by my name instead of hey you, or that homeless guy." Mia gave me that. Mia shook her head. "You gave it to yourself, Sarge. I just recognized your value." I looked at both of them. This young woman who'd risked everything to do the right thing, and this veteran who'd survived so much, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in the company's success or stock price, but in what we were becoming. The bell above the door chimed, and more people filed in. Employees from various locations, customers who'd been following the story, local business owners, reporters. I'd prepared a speech, but standing there in my original cafe, surrounded by the community I'd meant to serve, the words I'd planned seemed wrong. So I just spoke from the heart. When I was 23 years old, I lost my apartment. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck, working 2 jobs, trying to pay off student loans. Then I got sick. Nothing serious, just the flu, but serious enough that I missed a week of work. That was all it took. I couldn't make rent. I was evicted. The room was silent. For 6 months, I lived in my car. Then I lost the car. For another year, I bounced between shelters and the streets. And the thing that surprised me most wasn't the hunger or the cold, it was the invisibility. People looked through me. To them, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a problem to step around. I paused. There was one coffee shop, not this one, a different one that's long since closed, where the owner would let me sit for hours on one cup of coffee. He never made me feel ashamed. He never made me feel less than. He just treated me like a customer, like a person. That's what I tried to create here. That's what I lost sight of. And that's what we're getting back. I looked around the room. Sterling Grind isn't about coffee. It never was. It's about dignity. It's about the radical idea that every human being deserves respect, warmth, and kindness. That you shouldn't have to be wealthy or well-dressed or socially acceptable to be treated like you matter. We failed at that. I failed at that. But we're going to do better. I pulled out a piece of paper, the new company mission statement that would be going on the wall of every location. At Sterling Grind, we serve community, not just coffee. We believe that everyone who walks through our door has value. We don't judge you by your bank account or your clothes or your circumstances. We see you. We welcome you. You belong here. If you're struggling, we want to help. If you're thriving, we want to celebrate with you. If you just need a warm place to exist for a while, we've got you. This is your space. These are your people. This is home. Someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding. I saw tears on faces, Thomas's daughter, some of the employees, even a few reporters who were supposed to be objective. Mia came up and hugged me. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. You started this. All I did was back you up. What happens now? I smiled. Now? Now we keep doing the work. One cup of coffee at a time. One human interaction at a time. We prove that you can run a successful business and still have a soul. 1 year later, the boardroom on the 47th floor of Sterling Tower was full for the annual shareholder meeting. On the screen behind me were the numbers. Revenue up 23%, customer satisfaction at an all-time high of 4.7 across all locations, staff turnover down to 22% from 78%. But the number I was most proud of was different. In the past year, I told the shareholders, Sterling Grind locations have served over 150,000 free meals to people in need. We've partnered with 200 homeless shelters and veterans organizations. We've hired 45 people who were previously unhoused, giving them not just jobs, but career paths with full benefits. We've also implemented company-wide sensitivity training, created an anonymous reporting system for discrimination, and established a fund to help employees facing financial emergencies. One shareholder raised his hand. Mr. Sterling, while these initiatives are admirable, what's the ROI? What's the business justification? I smiled. The business justification is that we're a business built by and for human beings. Our return on investment is that we have happier employees who stay longer and work harder. We have customers who are loyal because they share our values. We have a brand that people trust and respect. But in pure financial terms, we're more profitable than ever. Turns out people like giving money to companies that aren't soulless. Who knew? The room laughed. After the meeting, I took the elevator down to street level and walked to the Sterling Reserve. Mia was now the permanent manager, working on her MBA part-time with a company scholarship. She'd hired a diverse team that reflected the community, different ages, backgrounds, experiences. Sarge was there, as he was most days, talking with a young veteran who'd just walked in looking lost and scared. I watched Sarge put a hand on the kid's shoulder, say something that made him relax, then guide him to a table and bring him food. On the wall was Mia's sign, "Everyone welcome," and below it, a new edition, a framed copy of Thomas Wright's original letter to me, the one that had started all of this. We'd gotten his permission to display it, and he'd even come to the framing ceremony. At the bottom of the frame, we'd added a quote. The measure of a company is not its stock price or its market share. It's how it treats people when they have nothing to offer but their humanity. I got in line. Yes, I still waited in line at my own cafe, and when I reached the counter, the barista smiled at me. Good morning, Mr. Sterling. The usual? Actually, I said, I'll have whatever Sergeant Brennan is having, and I'll cover his tab. Sir, Sarge's tab is always covered. Company policy for veterans, remember? Right. Of course. I smiled. Then I'll cover the next person in line behind me. Pass it forward. I took my coffee to table 4, the table where I'd sat in disguise a year ago, invisible and ignored. Now it was the most popular table in the store, the one everyone wanted. Not because it was in a better location or had better lighting, but because everyone knew the story. They knew that change had started here. As I sat down, my phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. Forbes wants to interview you for their corporate conscience issue. Also, 3 more coffee chains have announced they're copying our everyone welcome policy. You're starting a movement. I looked around the cafe, at the students studying, the business people working, the homeless man warming his hands around a cup of coffee, the mother with a crying baby who wasn't being asked to leave, the veteran talking quietly with Sarge. Everyone belonging. Everyone valued. Everyone home. I typed back. Tell Forbes yes. But tell them I want Mia and Sarge to be part of the interview. They're the real story. Because that was the truth. I hadn't changed Sterling Grind alone. I'd been the CEO, but Mia had been the hero. Sarge had been the catalyst. Thomas Wright had been the voice of conscience. Change doesn't come from the top down. It comes from everyday people choosing kindness over cruelty, courage over comfort, humanity over profit. I'd just been lucky enough to be in a position to back them up. As I sipped my coffee, still the same blend I'd served in my first tiny storefront, still $3 for a small. I thought about that coffee shop owner who'd shown me kindness when I had nothing. The one who'd inspired all of this. I tried to find him over the years, to thank him, to tell him what a difference he'd made. But he died 5 years ago, his little shop closing with him. I like to think he'd approve of what Sterling Grind had become. Or rather, what it had returned to being. The door chimed, and I looked up to see a young woman entering, college age, wearing clothes that had seen better days, carrying a backpack that looked too heavy. She stood in the doorway, uncertain, counting change in her hand. Mia saw her and smiled. Good morning. Come in, grab a seat wherever you'd like. What can I get you? The girl approached the counter hesitantly. I only have $2. What can I get for that? Mia didn't even blink. What would you like? Really, this is your space. You're welcome here. I watched the girl's face transform, from wariness to hope to gratitude. I watched her order a latte and a muffin, watched Mia hand her the sterling black card application for students facing financial hardship, free coffee while you're in school, watched her find a table and open her laptop with the kind of relief that comes from finding safe harbor. And I knew that whatever challenges came next, whatever pressures from investors or competitors or market forces, we'd face them the same way. By remembering that behind every transaction was a human being. By choosing kindness. By keeping our doors open to everyone. By making sure that anyone who needed a warm place, a kind word, or just a cup of coffee could find it at Sterling Grind. Because that's what we were built for. That's what we'd always been meant to be. And that's what we'd remain. One cup of coffee, one act of dignity, one welcomed customer at a time.